In 2006, a study was conducted in which human resource managers in the hospitality industry were asked how visible tattoos and piercings would impact on how they perceived a job interviewee. Over 80% responded that it would cause them to view the person negatively. Thankfully, a more recent study has indicated that tattoos no longer impact employment the way they might have in the past. And indeed, if someone was to be refused employment on the basis of body art, in most countries, the company would be accused of discrimination, stemming from a prejudiced view. So what exactly do those words mean, and what contributes to it? Prejudice, or prejudgment, is an unfavorable attitude towards a group of people, often as a result of stereotyping. Discrimination is the action that stems from that. Prejudice is normally directed towards a group, and discrimination is often against an individual. Using the tri-component model of attitudes, as covered in the previous video lesson, you could say that prejudice involves the cognitive and affective components, and discrimination is the behavior. Using the tattoo example again, the employers would be showing prejudice if they thought or felt negatively about people with tattoos, and discrimination would be if they took the action not to employ them as a result. Prejudice is a form of antisocial behavior and is therefore a cause of concern in any community. In Australia, it is unlawful to discriminate on the basis of many attributes, including age, disability, race, and sex, in areas such as education and employment. However, we continue to educate on the science and harm of prejudice because it's difficult to eradicate once established. Victims of prejudice also suffer many long-term physical and psychological effects, including low self-esteem and limited ambition. Let's look at some of the factors that cause and perpetuate prejudice. The 4 influences we'll look at are scapegoating, direct experience, personal and group prejudice, and finally the prejudiced personality. The origin of the word scapegoat comes from the Old Testament, in which the Israelites were told to symbolically sacrifice one goat and let another go free, which would take on the impurities of the people. Today we use this word to mean the fall guy. Scapegoating thus involves blaming a person or group for something negative and the consequent ill treatment. Some studies have suggested that in the late 19th and early 20th century in the US, a poor economy sometimes induced white people to take out their frustrations by attacking black men. The in-group decides on the target out-group to blame for their problems, and discriminates towards them in verbal or physically abusive ways. Another simple reason that people develop prejudice is because of direct experience. A single negative experience with someone from an out-group might result in generalization towards the entire group as we socially categorize or socially compare. A bad personal experience with a police officer may result in prejudice towards all police officers, and even if we later encounter many good cops or are told about positive evidence, it can be very hard to override direct experience. I mean, it's what we experience, right? This is a form of bias, and is what we call in science anecdotal evidence. That is, data that didn't come from using the proper scientific method, but from personal experience or stories. It's also worth thinking about the fact that while prejudice can stem from an individual, a person can also receive prejudicial views from the groups they're a part of. Bloomer suggests that there are 4 basic characteristics of prejudiced groups. Firstly, they tend to believe that they are superior to the outgroup. They see the outgroup as different and that they do not belong. They see themselves as more powerful and important. And finally, they tend to be insecure and fearful of the outgroup becoming more important and powerful than they are. Our final explanation for prejudice is an interesting one, and it's that some people might just be more likely to hold prejudicial views simply because of their personality. Now, this is in no way an excuse, of course, for such attitudes and behavior, just another way of understanding it. Gordon Allport argued that prejudice involves a general cognitive style or a way of thinking, more than just how someone feels about another group of people. Others have proposed that people with authoritarian personalities might be more prone to prejudice because of their high regard for obedience and authority, and I suppose a lack of understanding towards others who don't toe the line. Of course, there are criticisms of these views, including why people might only be prejudiced against some groups, but not others. I think we all agree that all people have the right to equal treatment, and so it's important that we understand prejudice and discrimination to take steps towards eliminating it. And that includes looking within ourselves to see what attitudes we hold towards people in groups that are not our own.